Hello, everybody. This is John Self. Welcome to Career Live. It's about 11:31 Central Time in Texas, and we'll wait just a minute to let people come into the stream. Glad you're all joining us today. This will be available on replay later today. So we'll wait just a minute to let people find the live stream, and then and move from there. Okay, thanks for joining us. We're running a few minutes behind today, but appreciate everybody joining the stream. If you have any questions, just post them in the chats, and we'll try to answer them. We'll start off today talking a little bit about the jobs report that came out this morning. The jobless rate is unemployment rate is 3.7 in May. That's a slight uptick from the previous month. There are still 175 million people claiming unemployment. That's a fairly low number historically, but the jobless rate this month, the latest report, was 261,000 new claims, and that's the high in the past week. That's the highest claim rate since October 2021. So still getting mixed signals in the economy. If you're in the job market, a lot of people say, we hear these incredible reports about how people can't find enough, qualified help, and yet I apply for jobs and I'm one of 100 or one of 500. And what's going on? Well, it's the type of job you're looking for. A lot of the 7+ million jobs that say are unfilled, a lot of those are in lower level positions in the service industry. A lot of wait staff, housekeeping staff. Some of the lower level positions. If you are looking for a leadership role or a management role, it's going to be a lot more competitive. So you just have to be aware of that. That's one of the great myths. There are a lot of jobs out there that are posted but they're not being filled, and a lot of those some of that is what I call the Chat GPT effect. And here's what I mean by that. 2 or 3 weeks ago, British Telecom announced that they were laying off 55,000 people. My God, I didn't know British Telecom had that many people to begin with. And that's just my ignorance about the company. 10,000 positions, additional positions, were not going to be that they were identified as being left unfilled because the company believes those jobs can be adequately handled with the rollout of Chat GPT technology. 10,000 jobs that can be replaced with Chat GPT technology. This past week, Becker's in Healthcare, that's a newsletter service, and I imagine they work over a cross-section of industries. Becker's announced that more and more healthcare people were beginning to use Chat GPT for lower-level jobs, basic copywriting, web page development, those types of things. So, I have a lot of clients that say that they are using Chat GPT to help streamline their resume for presentation on a customization basis. So ChatGPT is still an issue. It's going to be a bigger issue. This has been around for a lot longer than most people realize, and so that's why the evolution of it seems to be going at a breakneck speed. And to be honest, it is. So we hope that you will We hope that you will, pay attention to that technology, watch what's going on very, very carefully, and uh, and 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 if you're in a job that can be replaced by Chat GPT, please pay attention, because what companies are going to do is they're going to start evaluating people, and they're going to get rid of people who are really in a when their performance is not top drawer. If it's mediocre, then you could be a target for job elimination. So pay attention. This whole technology is changing the workplace, and it's not going to be enough just to show up and do your job and earn your paycheck and go home. You've got to come in and do your job and add value to the organization. If you're just there taking up space, in the past, you might have gotten away with that for a whole career. That will not be the case going forward. Technology is really turning our lives upside down. So if you're in one of those lower level roles, start paying attention to how ChatGPT is going to be interfacing with companies. Want to talk a little bit today about some of the myths in career management. And boy, are there a bunch of those. I did a whole series of quotes once on myths. One is that that you could just, if you show up to work on time and make a good effort, that would be enough to protect you in a layoff, and that's not true. There are a lot of people who were longtime Google employees, longtime Amazon employees, longtime Microsoft employees, who were showing up, doing their work, and what was expected of them, and they still got laid off. You have to add value. And the other thing you have to do is you have to build relationships in an organization. There have been some people laid off in virtual company environments, and because they got transferred to a new group and did not have the time or the ability, the know-how to build relationships with their remote team. So while we love the fact that we can get up in the morning and go into our home office and do our jobs there and not spend an hour and a half in the car or in a train going into the city, that saves a lot of valuable time in the day. It is very, very difficult to build relationships. And I think you'll see a whole sort of cottage industry evolve, where to help people build relationships on a virtual basis. Because when it gets down to making choices, some of the people who get laid off are laid off because they didn't have relationships in the company, they weren't perceived as being friendly, they allowed themselves to be marginalized, and so they allowed themselves to be the easy choice. Okay, don't be the easy choice. And we now are seeing a lot of companies begin to seriously look at making mandatory return to the office 3 days a week, 2 days a week to 3 days a week are fairly common things. And some of that, a friend of mine who early on said, this is never going to work because you won't be able to build the relationships. And I kind of poo-pooed the idea. And this lady who was a former partner with a major consulting company, she knows who she is. She said, "Oh, that has some real down side effects." And at the time, I really wasn't thinking about it too deeply, but I have been lately, because I have some clients who really got whacked because they didn't have the relationships. They may allow themselves to be marginalized. They allow themselves to be the easy choice to be laid off. And when you're laid off, you are, it's a loss. And that means that they picked somebody else, to stay, and they picked you to leave. So build relationships. The same skill set that you use to get the job, that is to build trust and likability with the recruiter and the hiring manager, you have to make that same effort in with your colleagues. And you have to do it every week, not just when you feel like it. That's something you now have to do every week, especially if you have a big remote component to your job. I suspicion that we're going to start hearing about water cooler Zoom meetings at some point. Some of the myths that I want to talk about today is I was contacted recently by an overseas resume company. And let me say this. There are a lot of incredible creators in India, Pakistan, and the Middle East and Europe. And they do some very good work. When it gets down to your resume, don't fall for the nonsense that we've optimized your resume. You hire a resume writer because they understand the market in which you're working, and they have the ability to interview you and draw out the key elements of your value, because that needs to be the underlying foundation for your resume. Your resume has to really be based on your strengths and your ability to get the job done. And sometimes I tell people you can do this yourself, and you can. My clients, when they come to me, we spend a time on a research interview so I get to know them and help them shape their underlying foundation for their resume. Understand their value brand statement or their value proposition. A lot of times, these people that are resume writers, particularly overseas, they don't understand the U.S. market, and they don't understand because they want you to pay them $700, $500, $700, $1,000 for a resume, and that's fine. But if it's not worth it. And the reason it's not worth it is because they may produce a great looking resume, but if it's not set up in a way that will scan in the U.S. system with the U.S. based applicant tracking systems, then you're probably wasting your money. Okay, one person came to me and they hadn't had any success with a professionally produced resume. They just weren't getting any responses. And I said, well, are you customizing the resume before you submit it for each job? And they said, well, I don't have to, because the resume writer told me they had optimized it for my industry. Well, the algorithms are not based on general optimization of an industry. There may be some elements of the algorithm with industry terminology, et cetera. The algorithms that are used to select applicant resumes are based on the specific job description. Okay? They're not, if your resume has been optimized, great. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have to still invest the time to optimize that resume. And it's not difficult to do this. You can use one of our worksheets and happy to send it to you for no cost. And it's it's not rocket science. You go through and identify the keywords, look at key phrases, and look at what they're really looking for. Really evaluate that, and then start going through each section of your resume, from your professional summary all the way through all of your listings, your job listings, and use the appropriate, applicable keywords and phrases in every one of your job positions. If you just dump it in the professional summary, that's called a keyword dump, and the ATS will not give you a very good score. It has to be promulgated throughout your resume. So do not fall for the tip, the sales pitch that, listen, we charge you more because your resume is optimized and you won't have to customize it. That's just not true. And people who fall for that can't understand why they're not getting callbacks, or they don't get past the first screening interview, if they even get that far. So that is one of the big myths that's out there today. You don't have to really build relationships. You can just do your job. Doing a good job is not enough anymore. Okay. Having a resume that's not customized for each job is not going to work anymore. So these are all independent. These are all sort of myths that float around the industry. Another big myth is, I have a big network, therefore I can find a job quickly. Well, I have a huge network, but that's no guarantee I can find a job quickly. Okay, your network, like your resume, has to be targeted. And so one of the things that we tell people now is that if you're going to build a network, target it based on your career plan. Okay, you can't have a network that's spread all over the United States, because you can't manage more than about 150 relationships. And so you want to be sure you build a network that's targeted to your plan geographically and job title. That's really important. And, uh, and if you don't do that, you're not going to have a network that's optimized to help you find a job. Um, a lot of people say the only people that ghost them more than recruiters are LinkedIn networking connections. And that's really pretty sad. But the reason that's happened is because LinkedIn is now grown so rapidly. It's gone from, just a few thousand people at the end of the first year of operation to more than 900 million. And what you're seeing now, and most of you are, you're seeing people who want to connect with you and then immediately try to sell you something, a resume, an email program, whatever it is. And that's pretty cheesy. If you connect with somebody, then try to sell them, and then in the next email message, you deserve to be unfriended. You deserve to be blocked. Okay, that's just garbage way to do this. But we're not. It's too big a platform. LinkedIn has no ability to limit the sales pitches. That's why all of our marketing is content oriented. We put it out there, and if people have an interest in what we do, we let them come to us. Yeah, we post videos, we post on YouTube, we post on LinkedIn, and we will offer things, but we don't do a lot of direct email to LinkedIn people. We don't spam our connections. We use those connections to get placement in their news feeds, but it's almost a sort of an indirect permission kind of marketing. So be very suspicious. And I guess that takes to another point that I want to make with you is you decide who you're connected with. Not You're going to get a lot more connection requests than you have a need or interest in. Make choices based on where you want your career to go and where you want to be professionally. Uh, and it's really important to build your network using that framework. Why? Because if you're trying to get to the top, if you want to be a CEO of a health system, or if you want to be a CEO of a manufacturing company, you're going to need people to help you get to the top. And I guarantee you, I have seen more CEOs lose their jobs because they didn't develop relationships network wise. And then once they got into the company, they didn't build relationships within the organization. And when you don't, if you're a tough leader and you beat people up, there's going to be a time where everybody's going to stand back and let the bullet come straight through to you. They're not going to try to help you or protect you. They're going to sit back and watch you swing in the wind. And with that regard, this morning Becker's, which is, I believe they work in civil industries, but they're a big newsletter company in healthcare, published a piece on the Korn Ferry report about CEO empathy. And they did an annual survey of 3,000 human resource professionals and found that 1/3 do not consider their CEO to be empathetic, a 16% decline from the same survey last year. So the perceived drop is confined to the CEO role, as 92% of the same professionals consider their other colleagues to be empathetic, despite the tough economy, according to Korn Ferry. Research from the firm shows that empathy in a CEO correlates with employees' perception of them. Empathetic chief executives are more likely to be successful long-term leaders, garner positive job performance ratings, and see high retention in their workforce. So if you aspire to leadership, doing a good job is not enough. Building relationships, developing your team, being an empathetic leader, care about what happens to your people, care about how they're being treated, and how you treat the people that report directly to you, and then your leadership team, how they're treating their people. I am just provided some insights to a great healthcare leader, one of the great innovators, in healthcare back in the '80s. A guy by the name of Dan Nielsen, who was brilliant. Had this hospital that was in financial trouble in Grand Prairie, Texas, and he built it into an innovative powerhouse. Because he treated people well, and they were willing to get on board with his ideas for creativity. And Dan was a terrific leader, and it still is. Does a lot of keynotes, for healthcare organizations and leadership groups. And in the information, he wanted my thoughts on where we are in healthcare. And I sent back some thoughts. Number one, I think these elements need to be added to a CEO and the leadership team's incentive compensation package. Number one, employee turnover. Employee turnover. Number two, the employee satisfaction. If you're in healthcare, physician satisfaction, and then in the in-group patient satisfaction. You ought to be held accountable for those things because those are central to your organization's success. Employee turnover is extremely important. If you look the average nurse, the cost of replacing the nurses in an organization, we're talking millions of dollars that affect hospital bottom lines that can be directly related to turnover, particularly nursing turnover. I had surgery in 2021, and the nurses taking care of me in the ICU were all 1 and 2 year nurses. And when I started in healthcare, you didn't get close to an ICU as a nurse until you'd been around about 5 years and really had great bedside skills. And I said, what happened to all the experienced nurses? And they said, when the pandemic started, they could make more money as a traveling nurse. And so they went into the traveler business. And I said, so how did they replace them? And the executive said, we hired travelers. Go figure. I mean, that's nuts. Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Appreciate your feedback. Dr. Berry, it's great to see you again. Thank you for your feedback as well. We have this kind of bizarre approach in some industries about turnover. CEOs need to be held accountable. That's a real cost. It takes money off. It affects your bottom line performance, and you need to start paying attention to that. If you're in an industry like healthcare, you need to be held accountable for quality and safety. And you need to hold your team accountable for quality and safety. That's a huge issue in healthcare. It still is a huge issue in healthcare. Dan Nielsen, Nielsen, I believe it may be SON. I should know his spelling more, but it's Dan Nielsen. He is a LinkedIn member, and I think you can connect with him. He's also on Facebook. A really first-class guy, very, very creative, very inspirational. He is a gentle man, and was a gentle man as a leader. So there you go. All right. So one of the things I would, like to encourage you to do is, if you are a leader or aspiring to leadership, make it central to your style and to your development that you're going to really be treating people with respect, and you will be an empathetic leader. And I think that's extremely important, and to be successful. When you go up, sometimes being a CEO can be a very lonely experience. And if you're a CEO in a rural hospital, for example, you may be one of the largest employers in the community. And you're under the microscope constantly, whether you're at the grocery store or, out having dinner or going out to, having a drink and dinner by yourself. You're constantly under the microscope, and it can be a very lonely position. And so you have to build supporting people in your organization, but you also have to have people external to the organization that you can rely on and depend on to provide you that support as you because you're going to deal with challenges, you're going to have crises that come up, and if you take that for granted, you will find yourself looking for another job pretty quickly. Another thing I wanted to bring up on the myth side, if you have a targeted network that can help you find a job by referring you to a position, that is the most efficient way to find a job. 60 to 70% of all the really good jobs are never posted. And so having a targeted network, targeted organization, targeted geography will help you get actionable intelligence when you enter the job market. If one of your connections reaches out to you for help, ask a question. Be responsive. I have a huge network because my marketing objectives are entirely different than finding a job. And one of the things that it always bothers me is that sometimes I'll overlook a request or I'll overlook an email in the dozens and dozens I get every day on my LinkedIn feed. So that's why it's important if you're looking for a job to be sure that you're targeting your network toward geography and companies where you would like to work, and don't let it go too far north of 150 to 200 people. The research shows that your brain simply can't keep up and build those kind of relationships. And keep in mind, just because you're connected with somebody, if you don't have any knowledge of one another, if you haven't built a trusting relationship with one another, it's very difficult for you to ask them to refer you for a job. They, look at it from their perspective. If they refer you into their own company and you do a terrible job, then they're going to look bad. Somebody said, what's one of the most significant statements or most accurate statements that you've encountered with people coming to your firm looking for help in the job transition or career planning? And I think I'm reminded of that quote they used in the opening of the great movie about the 2008-2009 housing real estate bubble that nearly sunk our economy. And the line was attributed to Mark Twain, which is not accurate, but it's a great quote, that it's not what you know for sure. It's not what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And that is very, very common in the career business. That people think that they know something, and that's absolutely the case, and it's just not. People don't look for jobs all the time. I mean, some people may look 10, 12, 15 times in a career. That's it. And if you think about it, you may interview 3 times for each job. That's 45 interviews. That's not, you're not going to do a lot of interviewing, and you're not going to look for a lot of jobs in your career. And so that's why people like me exist, to help you, guide you through the process. I had one guy said, look, I don't need any help interviewing. After I interviewed him for several hours regarding a CEO position, it was just a painful interview, I'm sorry to say. And I said, you might want to hire a coach. At that time, I was a retained executive recruiter and wasn't in that business. And he said, I don't need to do that. I mean, I'm a really good speaker. I give great PowerPoint presentations. A myth. I'm a good speaker. I give good PowerPoint presentations. Well, an interview is not a PowerPoint presentation. It's more like an extemporaneous speaking contest with 75 or 80 questions. And most people I remember in high school when I was a debater, and in college, you'd have those academic champion meetings or competitions. And the one thing that you would always had trouble recruiting people who wanted to be on the team for extemporaneous speaking. I did it one time to fill in, and the question was, I had 8 minutes to talk about my life inside a ping pong ball. If I did not participate in adult beverages back then, but if I had, I think I would have just said, that's it, I'm out of here, and gone to the bar. I'm an effective CEO, therefore I'm an effective in interviews. Oh, that is not even close to being true. People, if you're a CEO, that means you're the boss. It doesn't mean that you necessarily did a good job in the interview to get that position. And let me tell you why people struggle so much. We can talk about process, and we can talk about philosophy, and we can talk about policy, and we can talk about what we need to do to change. But in an interview, you're talking about yourself. You're selling yourself. You're communicating who you are and what you do and why you do it. And it is amazing the answers you get when you ask people, why do you do what you do? They had not thought about it to the extent that they could give me a 25-word or less declarative statement. So tomorrow's video in our Got a Minute series is about the big why. Why do you do what you do? Simon Sinek is our sort of featured person who explains why this is so important. Because people don't hire you necessarily for your degree. Now, if you're a physician, certainly that comes into play, but they don't necessarily hire you for your degree or where you went to school. You more often than not, across the broad spectrum, you get hired because of not who you are or what you are or even your past record. You get hired for why you do what you do, and that's that factor that really results to your enthusiasm and your passion for your work. And when you start getting into those areas in interviews, people get uncomfortable because they're not used to talking about themselves, and they certainly don't want to talk about their feelings. I think one of the greatest interviews I ever had was a brilliant guy, just absolutely brilliant. He was a tough leader, and it took him several misadventures to change that process. But now he is absolutely crushing it in his new position. And Mike Young, who leads Temple Health, and he was very comfortable talking about himself because he'd gone through some real struggles in his life, and he talked about why he became a hospital manager and executive, and then CEO, and he did it with great emotion, empathy, and passion. And so that can really make a difference in an interview. Kathleen Forbes, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it very, very much. It's not all about your experience. It's about your ability to communicate your experience. About your ability to communicate your values, why you do what you do. So those are some of the common myths that are around in the business. I mean, I've been around a long time, and I've heard some really great answers and some really bad answers. I want to tell you before we go today about a course that we will start on Monday. I believe it's Monday or Tuesday on the 12th, and it is Networking 3.0, and it's a month-long course, and it's an online course so that you can get the information when it's convenient for you. We'll be finishing that up this weekend, and it'll be posted up by Sunday night, and available for start to take the courses on Monday, I believe it is. But it also includes a weekly live coaching session with me. And if you look for 4 weeks of weekly coaching sessions, that would be anywhere from $600 to $800 in my time. This course is available for $149. We can do that because we're doing it online. I don't have to teach it live for everybody separately. So it's a $149 course, and I think, yeah, and now here's a little hint. If you go over there today, you might be able to get for the pre-enrollment sale. Price still may be in effect. So if you sign up today before team changes that price back to the regular price of $149, you can save $49. And if it's not changed, then I'm sorry. But if you the first 2 people who who are interested in the course and send me an email that says sign me up, we'll give you a 50% discount coupon for that course. So that would be about $74 for a value of about $600, which is a pretty good investment. So that course will come out on Monday. We have full online courses for career transition. And then we have courses that you can buy independently. And if you get a point and you have some issues in your career that require customized courses or customized teaching, we also have the ability to do that. So I hope this has been helpful information today. We are still we're evaluating all of our streaming. We had been doing this at 7:30 in the morning, and a lot of people said it was just a tough time to do it. So we're going to try at 11:30, 12:30 Eastern time. If you have a suggestion about when it would be more beneficial to sit on the live, let me know, because we're really trying to build that. Most of our people come in off LinkedIn. This course will be available for replay later today on both LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you want to go back and re-listen to any of this. So again, repeating, the guy's name that I mentioned was Dan Nielsen, Nielsen, I believe it is. He is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He was with VHA for a while. After he left his hospital CEO role, he went and joined the VHA in its early stages and made an incredible contribution there as well. So one of the great things about being a recruiter is that you get to meet some incredibly interesting people. And I still remember I was doing a search for a CMO job, and I met this guy by the name of Frank Ehrlich, and he was a surgeon who had retired from active practice of surgery, and he talked about how he had how what had really helped him define his values as a practicing physician. And the day he started medical school, his brother died. And when I tell this story, I get kind of emotional. The day he graduated, he went to his brother's tomb, buried the tassel from his graduating hat by the tomb, and promised his brother he would be a good doctor. And I think that is what's missing in healthcare today is we hide our emotions. We don't let our passions drive us for excellence. And I tell you, you start asking executives some self-reflective questions, and they get uncomfortable. Frank Erling told me, he said, I never got sued. If we made a mistake, we owned up to it, we dealt with the family, but I never got sued. And he said, I'm never worried about the money. He said, when you, as a physician or an executive, if you start chasing the money, there'll never be enough of it, and you won't really find happiness. He said, if you're a good doctor, if you're a good leader, if you build strong relationships, the money will come. So I hope that's been helpful. Pardon me for my little emotion with Frank, but he is was one of the most interesting people I've met in my 27-year career of global executive search. Thank you all very much today. I hope that we'll see you next week. We'll be back here at the same time, 11:30 next Thursday, and we're working on making the programs a little bit more structured. I'm still learning how to do live stuff. Somebody said, "Oh, you look like you're having fun." Earlier in my life, I was a crime writer and a newspaper reporter. I wasn't a TV guy, so some of these things are a little bit tricky for me to master. So thank you for your patience. I do appreciate your patience. I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate you joining us today. Cheers, everyone.